Welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast. I'm Kristen Zeman, and I am shocked you are here. But since you are, buckle up. This is the show for the bold, the brave, and the mildly unhinged souls who are done accepting the status quo. Around here, we challenge everything: your mindset, your comfort zone, and occasionally your tolerance for sarcasm. Each week, I drop a cocktail of truth bombs, hot takes, and hard earned lessons, sometimes wrapped in inspiration, sometimes wrapped in profanity. Either way, it's always wrapped in disruption. So if you're ready to stop settling and start stirring shit up in your life, your work, and maybe even the world, let's get into it. Hey, Chrissy, happy podcast day.
Hi, co-host. How are you?
I was going to say good because that's my default, but I am so tired. I actually want to lay my head on this microphone and go to sleep.
Well, you have been jet setting again across the world, so I expected you to be tired every time you come back from the West Coast time zone. It's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah. Do you know what's so weird is I could go to Europe where there's like an entirely different time zone and feel better than I do going 3 hours time zone. Like I know when I get to California or anywhere on the West Coast, 3 hours difference than the Eastern time I'm used to. What always happens is the first day I'm there, people will be like, "Do you want to grab dinner?" And dinner is for savages is like 7 p.m. That's 10 p.m. my time. I will fall asleep in my plate. I will literally pass out at the dinner table. I will just be deceased. So I can't even speak in complete sentences when I first get there. I have to force myself to stay up until 8 p.m. Mountain Time, Pacific Time, whatever you want to call it, because that's 11 o'clock time here. And and then I'm up at 4 a.m. It's ridiculous.
Well, and the worst part is, you know what, for me, when we go over there, if I eat anywhere, I need 4 hours before I go to bed for my body to sleep well, because otherwise I wake up all night with indigestion if I lay down too quick. So even if I try to adjust, if we're having dinner at 7 p.m. there, which is 10 p.m. here, my body is already going, what is wrong with you? And I know I'm not going to sleep that night. So I like when we go to that side and it's just the two of us and we're like, oh, it's 7 p.m. Let's go to bed, because we've eaten at 3 p.m. And then we're up of course, we're up at 4 in the morning, but that's fine. We get a workout in and we do whatever we have to do and we start our day. But we can't have any friends out there.
Oh my God, no. Sylvia Moyer, my actual co-host from the Hollow Bunny podcast, like the actual co-host. Listeners, you can't see that Chris Honey just literally got up and walked away. But anyway, I'll just talk to no one. My actual co-host and I were in LA and she had this brilliant idea to go to a comedy show. And I'm not even saying that sarcastically. It was brilliant. It was so fun, but it didn't start until 8 o'clock. So we didn't leave until 11 o'clock, 12:12, which is 2 a.m. My time, my body time. I mean, that was a great call. Shout out to Sylvia because I laughed for 3 hours straight. Like that was legit. But anyway, I just got back last night. And of course, I almost missed my connection because there were so many delays yesterday. So yesterday was just one of those days where I just let go. I was like, you know what? I'm going to miss my flight. No stress came over me. It was just one of those, it was my life's mantra. It is what it is. And as it turned out, a beautiful angel from American Airlines, I wish I knew her name, but she helped me out at the ticket counter and she said, I can get you on this flight. I have one seat left. It was in row 24B, middle seat, not something I would normally do because I've turned into a snobby flyer. And I said, ma'am, I will sit in the bathroom. if you need me to, just get me home. And she did. And while she was busy typing up, like, trying to get me on this flight, kid called. I could tell it was her kid because she's like, listen, I'm working right now. Just tell me you're okay. And it was a full on mom moment. And I was so impressed by it. I was like, work life balance, right? There's no such thing as work life balance, man. That's just called life. But anyway, that's for another topic. That glorious American Airlines angel got me on a flight. Here I am. And I have to reacclimate to this time zone. So it's crazy, but here we are.
I'm actually very excited about today's podcast because I did maybe mention to you that this should be a topic that we should cover because some of our listeners had asked for it, as well as I felt that I needed a personal refreshment in this particular topic. So
wait, do you need a refreshment or a refresher? do you want a refreshment? Can I get you a drink?
I actually do need. I forgot to bring that in here. But yeah,
my second favorite pastime in the world is correcting your grammar.
Yeah. So like I said, I need a refresher in this, and you clearly weren't listening to me. So I said it right. You just didn't hear me. But I wanted to make you laugh. So yeah, and again, this is part of the reason why I need a refreshment, like a tequila beverage. But
if only we could roll back the tape and hear you ask for a refreshment.
No, I mean we can't. It didn't record. So yeah, so I needed this. I needed this as well in my life right about now.
Okay, so the good. I am so glad that I can deliver for you. The topic this week is rumination, expectations, false narratives. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself in a full-blown mental argument with someone who is completely unaware?
Yes, and I'm looking at her.
Oh my gosh, me too. So this blog topic came about because we have a dear friend and he wrote a book. But before he even told us what was ailing him, he said, rumination. You know the word rumination. And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, I'm doing that. And he wrote a book and he is upset because there are some people in his inner circle that have not mentioned his book. And this is his very inner circle. He's getting great accolades from strangers. He's been on a couple of podcasts. It's a wonderful book. He's already sold a lot of copies, but he's very confused by the fact that people in his tribe have not mentioned it. And I loved this topic because there's a lot of room there for rumination. Why is it that these individuals who are family have not mentioned the book? Have they not read it? Do they hate him? One automatically goes to these stories and he's ruminating. The word, it's a one word that he has brought to the forefront of my life. And that's what I want to talk about because it is your brain's unpaid overtime shift. That's what rumination is.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is the whole managing of expectations because we all walk around the world and we expect people to treat us the way that we would treat them.
Right.
And the fact is they don't. And then we get upset. And I know I can be personal about it. I get upset because I would never treat someone that way. And I'm very thoughtful and I'm very much put other people's wants and needs before my own because it's just the way I am. It doesn't mean that I don't care about myself or my wants or needs, but the people that are closest in my circle, I always want to be able to help. But then when I don't get the same treatment back, there are sometimes I get frustrated and I have to remember that their love language is different than my love language.
Right. That's a really good point to bring up because this whole idea of expectations is where we get really jammed up because disappointment is not what people do. It's about what we expect them to do. And we expect people to show up the way that we would. We expect people to just know. We expect them to behave according to a script that they've never even seen. And when they don't, we get hurt. So it's not that they let us down, it's that our expectations let us down.
Yeah. And I will tell you, it was probably sometime around 2012, 2013 that I read Rising Strong by Brene Brown. And she talks about managing expectations because her and her husband have very different expectations about vacations. Insert topic here. And that really helped me in my personal life with my family, you and the kids, of managing my expectations where before, if I was feeling anxious or unsure about whatever we were going to go do, I wanted to sit down and have a conversation about it first so that I could manage my expectations. Because here's what I
Mm-hmm.
expected from it. I needed to know what you expected and the kids expected so that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get upset when it didn't go according to my expectations. And it's
Right.
hard to do, but that book really helped me start to understand that it doesn't matter how I present myself. I should never expect that back because we all live in, right? We all live through our own lenses.
Sure, absolutely. And it was Dr. Brene Brown that said disappointment is unmet expectations. And the more significant the expectation, the more significant the disappointment. So there are little things that we perhaps expect from people. It's the friend that doesn't text us back. You know, well, man, I texted them yesterday and I haven't heard back from them. It is the coworker who took credit for your idea. It's the silence after you maybe broke open your soul to someone and you got nothing in reciprocity. So those are things that happen, and we automatically fill in gaps with stories. And those stories, gosh, they can be so specific and intricate, and a lot of times they're just an act of fiction. We think they must not care, or they're selfish, or they should have known better. And that just goes right back to just the idea that they're just that. They're stories. They're absolutely fiction.
Yeah, and I like kind of what you talked about in your blog this week because I've had complete conversations in my head that never happened and I'm mad about it. You
Right.
know, because
Exactly.
I think I know how you're going to react to the comment I make, and I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about anybody that we talk to. We're having an issue, or you're disappointed in something. We automatically fill in the blanks of what we think they're going to say, and
Right.
we forget that that's through our lens. So
Yeah.
it's taught me to kind of try to sit back. But then there's also the fear of being vulnerable, of having that conversation, because now I'm going to look at you and say, I'm disappointed, and here's why.
Hmm.
And you have to have enough security with the person you're talking to be vulnerable so that they
Hmm.
don't just get mad and say something shitty.
Right. Yeah, because we automatically go into defensive mode trying to defend our actions or inaction. And a lot of times, just by saying, this is what I also loved, because this is from Brene Brown's book as well, is that she said when she would put these expectations on her husband, or when he didn't do something that she thought he should, she said, this is the story that I'm telling myself. And okay, so this just happened to me yesterday. I was talking to daughter Bailey, and I happened to notice that our son-in-law unsubscribed from my blog, my newsletter, my weekly newsletter. And, I was just kind of going through a list, because I was like, okay, 7 people have unsubscribed. But it was his email. And I was like, I felt like our friend whose, family member didn't read his book. And so I thought, whoa, that's so weird. So as I was on the phone with Bailey, I said, is your husband there? And she's like, no. And I said, well, when he comes home, would you ask him a question? Would you ask him why he unsubscribed from my blog? And she's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, I can take it. I'm like, if he thinks it sucks, that's okay. Cause I love the whole throw spears. Funny. So she just called today and she's like, okay, so I found out why Finn unsubscribed. I'm like, why? She goes, because it was the last time that we were in Naples, you made the comment like in joking, like, I can see if you guys unsubscribe. So he was sitting on the couch in our living room and he unsubscribed because he thought I would get a notification, and he thought he was funny. So in that 24 hours, I was like, he hates my work. He doesn't want to read it. And so I was ruminating. I was like, why doesn't my son-in-law want to read my blog?
Yeah, and he doesn't have the reputation in this family as being like the funniest. So like if the other son-in-law would have done it, we would have been like,
Yeah.
what an asshole. Like he's
See,
funny.
yeah, he's low key funny. He's like low key
He,
funny. See, he's
he's
like
like
smart
a
funny.
sneaker. He's like a
Yeah.
sneaky funny. So
And
yeah,
he
no,
was like waiting for. He's like, I did that a long time ago. But do you see what I'm saying? So
respect,
this is
respect.
that I know, and I just started laughing, and it was so funny because this was not planned. This just happened to happen over the last 24 hours. I was like, oh, my own son-in-law unsubscribed. I understand if strangers or people, I don't know very well, they don't like my work. Okay, it is what it is. But her own family, and so I found myself ruminating over this and wondering, what doesn't he like about it? So this goes back to my favorite handbook of life. And you know what it is. And I tell anyone who will listen what it is. It is the book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'm telling you, every lesson that I get in my life comes back to this book and the four agreements. And it just so happens that two of the four agreements fit perfectly in this idea of expectations and ruminating. The first one is don't make assumptions. We do it constantly. We assume people should know what we want. We assume they're ignoring us on purpose. We assume their silence means indifference. We build entire narratives on assumptions. And then we have the audacity to be offended by the stories that we ourselves write. So that's the first one. And the second one is don't take anything personally. So let's say that someone doesn't read your book, doesn't text you back, doesn't subscribe to your blog. If they don't compliment your haircut or acknowledge your effort, then it says more about their current bandwidth than about your value as a human being. But we personalize it. We take their inaction and we tattoo it on our self-worth. So those two rules of life came back in this conversation. What do you think about those two things?
Well, I think that that's one of my favorite books as well that I go back and reread quite often because I do need a reminder because I am very sensitive. So certain things will bother me a lot more than like they would bother you because you don't have that. Not saying that you're not sensitive, but you're not sensitive like I am. And
Right.
so I really do like that because it's the make assumptions part that the minute something happens, and it's interesting too, right? Because for 20 some years I've watched you sometimes in different situations unravel because of assumptions. Because in your head, you're like, I'm not going to get the job, or they don't like me, or what did I do? And you go through this whole thing. And I think we're good at pulling each other back when we get into that crazy spiral in our head. Like, okay, hold on a minute. Let's wait for the facts to come in and let's move through that. And especially when dealing with other people, I like that you say that it says more about them and their bandwidth, but I can't take that as an excuse.
Say more about that.
Well, because I think that when you have a relationship with someone, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or your children, like, because I can't take that, that's not an excuse for you to not be present and maybe compliment someone or read their book. This is somebody who's in your inner circle. Your inner circle. Something I know from this house, when you wrote this book, it was a labor of love. It was so stressful. You were up every morning. You ruminated about it at night. It preoccupied your every second. And then when it came time for you to take this project and give it to the world, you were terrified because there's so much in it that's personal and your thoughts and your views. So if the people closest to you can't take 5 minutes to pick it up or subscribe or read something, especially your book, read it. That says something to me.
Well, this is where I think we get caught in the trap. And so it would be very easy for me to fall back on that and say, you're so right. Oh my gosh, that was such hard work for me. I, first of all, don't think people realize, like, insert the listeners, think of something that you have done, this great accomplishment, whatever it might be. Maybe it's getting a promotion. Maybe it's putting yourself through school, going back to school, taking a class, doing something where you put yourself out there. You know how grueling it is. Everyone on the outside is like, cool, okay, but I don't think they realize it. And so I'm going to offer some grace there. And it's interesting, even more so than you are, because I don't think people realize or have any kind of concept or context of what it takes to put your effort and your blood and your sweat and your tears into a book, using that as an example. And so then when we come out on the other side and we're like, here, everyone should read my book that knows me, I don't feel that way because I don't think
I'm
they
not
even have any idea.
talking about everybody who knows you. I'm talking about your inner circle, like our friend in his book. Now ultimately he finds out why.
Well, you're gonna give the whole plot twist there, which is
Well,
completely
because I
defying
think
your argument. Let's
no,
see what
that
happened.
okay, so no, the reason why I'm saying this is because this is part of what I'm saying of why it's not an excuse. So he ruminated in his head instead of just asking the question. When just ask the
Right.
question.
And
And then
And he didn't want to ask the question. I also didn't want to ask the question. I remember, when I saw our son-in-law's name, I was like, I'm not even going to ask because I don't want to know the answer because he's going to say he hates it. And so our friend didn't want to engage in any conversations,
Right.
right?
And so, right. So when the answer finally comes out that she hadn't read the book yet because she wasn't ready to deal with what he had gone through, because it was a very traumatic and painful time for their family.
She said the book was sitting on her desk and she had not had the courage to pick it up
Right.
and to read about his pain. So the story that he was telling himself is that, she doesn't care. So here's where I would fall back on those two rules. Number one, don't make assumptions. Assumptions were made. I made assumptions. I mean, you and I both worked through this whole this very important speaking event that I was asked to speak at, and then I was uninvited, and boy, you went down that rabbit hole with me. We've already talked about it, but I was uninvited to speak. And the story I told myself is they hate me. And I mean, I
You
just
don't know
went
if
down
you're
this.
wrong. They may hate you.
Exactly. So that's an assumption, right? So you can sit here and make assumptions all day. I don't know the answer, but let's go the worst case scenario. Let's go, yeah, you know what? There was someone in the decision making realm that said, you know what? I don't like Zeman. And for whatever reason, I don't want her to speak at this event. So that's when we quickly, and I'm saying, when I say we, because all of the stuff that I write is therapy for myself, is because I need to hear it the most, is that I had to go right to number two, don't take anything personal. You could be the ripest, juiciest apple in the world, and there will still be someone that doesn't like apples, right? So
Yeah.
once you stop making assumptions, maybe true assumptions that you're making, maybe they are, they don't like your work, they don't like you. So then you just got to go right into don't take anything personal, because otherwise you're gonna spiral.
Yeah. So you talk about how to disrupt that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that I'll tell you that this particular blog post I'm going to print out and keep next to my bed, because it's disrupting that thought process, because I will lay in bed and just spiral
Mm-hmm.
over conversations that need to be had, or if I'm feeling like somebody didn't meet my expectations, and
Mm-hmm.
I will reread that paragraph probably a million times for the next, however long I live, because
Mm-hmm.
that is something that happens to me. I start building this whole narrative. And then when you start talking about disrupting my thought process and how to do that, that for me it's going to be pivotal for me to stop spiraling in my own head.
Yeah. So I think there's two remedies for this. So, our thoughts are the most powerful thing that we have. And that's where the ruminating happens. That's where the writing the stories of fiction happens. And a simple question interrupts that loop. And that is simply, what story am I telling myself right now? That question demands that you fact check your own fiction, and it might reveal something pretty game changing, like they didn't ghost you. They're in a spiral of their own, which in fact, what everyone else is. We are the stars of our own movies in life, right? And everyone else is a cameo, but we fail to realize, wow, they may be in the middle of their own stuff. They didn't mean to offend you. They were distracted, overwhelmed, or unaware, and that they're not heartless. They're human. So let's maybe offer the grace or ask the question. Here is the disruptive truth, is you don't have to forgive what hurt you, but you do have to challenge the story that you're telling about it, because you are the one living with it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like when I say to myself, what story am I telling myself right now? Now don't confuse this, because when you look at me and go, is that the story that you're telling yourself? That doesn't help. Like, so, just let's put that out there. But for me to sit back and go, what story am I telling myself right now? And then processing that story and having the ability to understand what part is fact and what part is fiction.
Yeah.
No matter who it is in your life, the words you're filling in your head, if they haven't come out of that person's mouth, then it's not real until you have that conversation.
Yeah, and you make a good point that someone else can't say it, because that's where the defensiveness comes in, where if you're
Yeah.
upset because you have unmet expectations and someone says just like that, is that the story you're telling yourself? That's not helpful. So I think that has to be an internal dialogue. And then here's the way I see it. You have two choices: whether you believe that you are wronged, you're making assumptions, and again, let's pretend it might be true, but a lot of times it's not. But it doesn't matter. Regardless, you have two choices. You either rewrite or release. So, number one, you have to communicate your expectations out loud with actual words. Like, with that statement, here is the story I'm telling myself. You unsubscribed from my blog. You didn't read something that's very important to me that I wrote. You didn't text me back. The story I'm telling myself is that you're upset with me. And that might be all it takes for the person on the receiving end to say, gosh, that was not my intention. And just as that family member did for our friend to say, I just haven't brought myself to pick it up and to read it because I know it's going to be hard to read. And that is, I mean, that's a wonderful dialogue. Your second choice is to let the expectations go. Don't take anything personal. It's probably not about you. And then you have to be able to move on, because holding unspoken expectations is, I think it's a form of emotional blackmail. It
I
keeps
love
the
that.
other person unaware that you are resentful. And
Right.
that is not connection. It is a setup for relational failure. And that's why I asked you, is how many arguments are you having with people for which they are completely unaware? So you're allowed to want things, because there's another notion here is, and I've heard myself say this before, and I think you've heard me say it too, is that if you have no expectations of anyone, you will never get let down. How many times in building up my walls after, something happened where I'm like, I expect nothing from no one. I expect absolutely nothing from no one. And then I will never get hurt and I will never get let down. That I have recognized is a really immature way to look at life, because you are allowed to want things. You're allowed to need things, but
And
you
it's a
can't.
lonely way to look at life.
So lonely. But you can't
Yeah.
expect people to read your mind and then
Right.
punish them when they fail to read your mind.
Right. No, I agree. And we fill our minds with all this stuff. It's like the only person I'm hurting is me, because I'm saying all these hurtful things to myself that I believe that someone else might say. And that really, so the only person I'm hurting is myself. I'm letting them live rent free in my brain when they don't deserve it. And really, if I just took 5 seconds to communicate my feelings and say, here's where it is, I could be completely wrong. And all of this was just a waste of time in my head. And if I was completely right, then that tells me it's time to move on anyways. So I get the answer one way or the other, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. So I think that that's the premise here, is that people will disappoint you. You're going to disappoint people. I mean, and that's not, I don't feel like that's pessimistic. I feel like that's reality in life. You are going to get disappointed, but what you do with that disappointment, well, that's on you. And so ruminating is like renting out your mental space to someone who may not even realize that they've wronged you. I mean, they're out there living their lives and you're mentally arguing with them in the shower, and having a dialogue with them, and they have no idea. And that's almost like that quote about forgiveness. I'm going to mess it up, but it's like, it's like drinking poison and no, what is
Hoping
it?
the other person dies, something like that.
Yeah. It's like when you hang on to anger and you don't forgive someone, it's like you've got the poison, and you're drinking it yourself, and you're expecting them to suffer an ailment. And I've totally screwed up that quote, but you got the idea. So you have to let them go, and you have to take back your space, and you have to disrupt the cycle. So I think that's the way you do it, is just asking the question, using your words, and I think that disruptors, listeners, that rumination is a thief. It steals your time, it steals your joy, it steals your clarity. And so I think that your call to action is simply to stop editing a story that was never yours to write. Stop rehearsing the betrayal, stop rewriting the scene, and stop expecting people to live inside your script. Instead, write a new one with clarity, with honesty, with curiosity. And the next time your brain starts spiraling, maybe just pause and ask, is this true? Or is this a story that I've told myself so many times that I've started to believe it? So disruption doesn't always mean taking down systems. Sometimes it means taking down the lies that you've built in your own mind, because when you disrupt your thoughts, you free yourself. And that's the kind of disruption that changes everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors, and stop making assumptions, and don't take anything personal. That's your call to action.
I'm going to go get a refreshment.
Go get yourself a refreshment and take a refresher. Bye, everyone.
See you next week.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Disruptor's Creed, where we don't do average, and we sure as hell don't do status quo. It's produced by me, Kristen Zeman, because I like to be in control of everything. Musical score is by Ethan Reardon and Jake Zeman, because talent runs deep in this gene pool. If you like what you heard, do that thing. Click subscribe, like, follow, or whatever button keeps this chaos flowing into your ears. And if you didn't like it, you probably need it more than you think. Head over to KristenZeman.com and sign up for my weekly brain droppings, where I dump thoughts, disrupt your thinking, and hopefully light a fire under your ass, all conveniently delivered to your inbox every Monday. You're welcome. Until next time, keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors. Onward and upward.